ဒီနေ့ပြတ်သွားတဲ့အချက်ကလေးပြန်ခောက်ပြီးတော့စာရင်းနဲ့လက်ပြီးပေါင်းစပ်ပြီးတော့ပြောမှာပါဒီရှားပေါ်လာတဲ့ကောင်းမှုပြုမှုကောင်းမှုနာမှုရှားမှုအစရှိတဲ့ကိုယ်မူရာတွေပေါ်မှာသူ့ပေါ်တဲ့အတိုင်းပေါ်ဒီမြည်လေးတွေတက်တာပြီးတော့ရှင်းရှင်းပြပေါ်နေရှိမှနေတာအနုပသနာလို့ပြောရပါတယ်ဓမ္မတတ္တရှိကြည့်နေခြင်းပေါ့ဓမ္မတတ္တရှိခြင်းဓမ္မတတ္တရှိကြည့်ခြင်းသူရဲ့အထည်ကိုကစရုပကအတ္တဝိသမ္မာဉာဏ်နဲ့စတိမှာဒါတွေပြထားတယ်အဲ့ဒါတွေလည်းပြောတော့ပါတယ်ပေါ်လာတဲ့ကိုယ်မူရမပြတ်မှတ်နေအောင်ဆိုပြီးတော့ဘုရားပြအားထုတ်ရှိရပါတယ်ရှိဆိုတော့နည်းနည်းလေးရှိလို့မရဘူးအများကြီးရှိရထက်ခတ်တယ်လည်းတခါရှိရကိုယ်မူရတယ်ပေါ်တယ်ဆက်ခတ်တယ်လည်းရှိရဘုရားပြအားထုတ်တစ်ဖက်ကလည်းပဲသံသဘောရွယ်စုမှုရှိရမယ်ဆိုတော့လည်းပြောတော့ပါတယ်ဘုံပေါ်ကစိတ်အားစိတ်ချိန်ကြရဲစွာချိန်ကြရှိရဘုံပေါ်ကစိတ်အားစိတ်ချိန်ကြရဲစွာရှိမှာကျောင်းပေါ်ကစိတ်အားစိတ်ချိန်ကြရဲစွာရှိမှာလမ်းပေါ်ကစိတ်အားစိတ်ချိန်ကြရဲစွာရှိမှာရှာမှုပေါ်ကစိတ်အားစိတ်ချိန်ကြရဲစွာရှိမှာကြွလမ်းချက်မှလို့ဒီရဆုံးရောက်ရရှိရဖို့ပေါ်လာရဖို့ပေါ်ကဆရာဆက်ချိန်ကြရစွာရှိမှာပြန်လှည့်တဲ့ခါလှည့်တာပေါ့လေဒါလည်းပါသူဖြစ်တယ်ဘာမဆိုအသေးကိုမြစ်တော်ခတ်တာဒီလိုပြတာဖွင့်လာတာဖြက်ကလေးရှုခွဲပေါ်လာတာနဲ့နောက်ကနေပြီးတော့စိတ်အားဆက်ချိန်လောက်ကြပြီးတော့ဆွေးကြနေတဲ့အများရှိရတာဟာယောဂီရဲ့တာဝန်ပဲဆိုတာဒါပဲရှိပြီးဘာမှမလိုဘူးဆိုတာပြောတော့ပါတယ်အဲဒီလိုရှိမှပါများလို့ရှိရင်စိတ်လေးစိတ်ထားလေးတွေတန်ရှင်းလာတာစိတ်လေးတန်ရှင်းပြေကင်းကောင်းရမှာပါဆိုတော့ချိန်လာတဲ့ဆရာစိတ်အာရုံမှာပေါ့တတိကလာတော့အဲဒီမှာကပ်ပြီးကြားနေတာတတိကကြလို့ရှိရင်ဒီဘဝစိတ်ကလေးကစိုက်ပြီးတော့ဝင်နေတာသမာဓိဆိုတာလည်းလိုဖြစ်လာတာပဲအဲဒါယုံရတာဝန်ဟောဒီလည်းခြေတော့တာပဲအဲဒါသမာဓိတွေဖြစ်လာတာစိတ်ကြီးတန်ရှင်းကြည်ကြည်ကောင်းရမှာပါစိတ်လေးစိတ်ထားလေးတန်ရှင်းလာတစိတ်ကနှစ်စိတ်ဒီတန်ရှင်းတဲ့စိတ်ကလေးတခုချင်းတွေ့လာဆိုလို့ရှိရင်တော့ဘာမှအားမရှိသေးတယ်လို့တခုနဲ့တခုဆက်ဆက်ပြီးတော့များလာလို့ရှိရင်အားဝယ်ကောင်းတော့အောင်လို့ပဲစွမ်းအားဖြစ်လာတာဒီချာလို့ရှိရင်ကောင်းလာနေပါလေအဲဒီကကြလို့ရှိရင်ယောဂီကအလုံးလုံးကပြောလာတာပဲတရားကပဲသူအားထုတ်လို့ရရှိတဲ့တရားကပဲဆွဲခေါ်သွားတာပါပဲကမ္မဋ္ဌာန်းဆရာကအတူတိုက်တော့မလို့တော့ဖြစ်ပါလိမ့်မယ်ကျိုးစားတဲ့ယောဂီတွေလည်းရှိပါလိမ့်မယ်
Sayadaw is going to continue speaking about what he left off speaking about the other day. On the evident arising, rising, falling, lifting, moving, placing, and other physical acts, to observe them as they are, applying a label, and to repeatedly observe them without a break is anupassana. To dwell, repeatedly observing, to apply repeated observation, repeatedly knowing, noting and knowing. The essence of anupassana, Sayadawgyi mentioned, is atapi, ardent effort, sampajano, clear knowing, and satima, mindfulness. So there should be ardent effort on the arising object of observation, one moment after another. This ardent effort shouldn't be just a little bit. There should be a lot of it. As soon as the object to be observed arises, one applies ardent effort. And there also needs to be the jhanic quality of aiming. So as soon as the rising arises, one applies ardent effort, aims the mind accurately, and observes steadfastly. When the falling arises, one applies ardent effort, aims the mind accurately, and observes steadfastly. On the lifting, apply effort, aim, and observe steadfastly. On the moving, apply effort, mental effort, aim, and observe steadfastly. On the placing also, apply ardent effort, aim, and observe steadfastly. And when we come to the end of the walking path, then on the standing object, one places the mind, observing with ardent effort, accurate aim, steadfastly. Then turning, observing the turning with accurate aim, ardent effort, and steadfast observation. Whatever object arises, whatever action it is, starting with the small details, such as opening and closing the eyes and blinking, as soon as the object to be observed arises, one applies effort, accurate aim, always, in order to observe. And this is the yogi's task. There's no other task that the yogis has to do. And when one does this a lot, then the mind becomes clean of defilements. They're distanced, and this is good. So we apply ardent effort and aim, and because of the effort, sati sticks to the object. The mind falls collectedly on the object, penetrating into it. This penetration into the object, the collectedness of the object, of the mind on the object, is samadhi. And the yogi has accomplished their task. They're doing their job at this point. Samadhi has arisen. So the mind is clean from defilements, and this is truly good. One moment of consciousness like this is not very much. But when one moment after another occurs without a break, continuously, then the power of this mind becomes amazingly strong. Try it and see for yourself. When this happens, the yogi becomes happy with the practice, when the mind becomes collected like this. And the Dhamma pulls one along. The teacher no longer has to urge the yogi to practice. And there are certainly yogis who are practicing in this way.
ချိန်ရှားလာတာဖောင်းတာလေးမှတ်လိုက်လို့ရှိရင်ဖောင်းရုပ်ပင်နာမှလို့ရှိရင်ပင်ရုပ်ဆိုတာပါတောက်လာလေးတွေကျင်းလာလေးတွေပါဒါလေးပေါ့ဟောဘက်ကဟောဘက်တောက်ကျင်းလာတာလေးရော့တော်တာလေးဖောင်းပြီးတော့တောင်းတဲ့လာတာလေးပြင်ပြီးတော့ရော့ကြတော့တာလေးဒါလေးတော့ပုံသဏ္ဍာန်ပြည့်ရတဲ့အာဂရပြည့်ရတော့မလွတ်သေးဘူးပေါ့သို့တော့သဘာဝတော့ကြည်တာပြည့်တော်ပြီတော့မရှင်းသေးဘူးပေါ့သဘာဝတက်တော့တက်တတ်မကြည့်သေးဘူးပေါ့ဒါပေမဲ့လည်းအဲ့ဒါကိုယုံနာကွဲတယ်လို့ဒီလိုဆိုတာပါပဲယုံနာတော့ကွဲတိကဖောင်းနဲ့တောင်းကျင်းနဲ့ဖောင်းရုပ်ကလေးတစ်ခုဣရာလေးတစ်ခုပညာမလို့ရှိရင်ပညာလေးတစ်ခုဣရာလေးတစ်ခုဆိုတာတွေးကိုယ်ဖြစ်နေတာတွေးတော့ပဲဒါယုံနဲ့နာကွဲပြီးတော့ပဲအဲ့ဒီခိုက်တော့မှကိုတွေးရတဲ့ယုံနဲ့နာနှစ်ခုကလွဲလို့ရှိရင်အဲ့ဒီမှာရှာကြည့်ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်လည်းမတွေ့တတ္တဝါလည်းမတွေ့ယောက်ျားလည်းမတွေ့မိန်းမလည်းမတွေ့တွေ့တာကယုံနာပဲဆိုတော့ဒါပဲပြီးတော့အဲလူတွေဆွဲထားတဲ့ကောနာជីវဓမ္မဆိုတာကအဲ့တော့လည်းမရှိတာကဒီလိုမျိုးပဲအရှိကိုအရှိတိုင်းကြည့်လိုက်တာနဲ့လည်းငါကမရှိဘူးအရှိလို့ပြီးတော့ဆွဲလိုက်တဲ့အခါကျအဲ့ဒါတွေတွေ့တော့တာဒါဝိပဿနာကပထမဆုံးစလာတဲ့အကြည့်ပဲယုံနာနှစ်ဝကွဲကြည့်ကအတ္တဒိဋ္ဌိကွာတဲ့ဒီလိုရှုနေရင်ကယုံနေတာကွဲကြည့်တော့လို့ရှိရင်မသိလို့ရှိရင်ခန္ဓာပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တ attva အစွဲဇီဝတ္တအစွဲပေါ့အဲ့ဒါကိုရှိနေတာတကယ်အရှိကိုရှုရင်းကအမှန်တိုင်းကြည့်တော့တယ်လည်းအဲ့ဒီပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တ attva အစွဲဇီဝတ္တအစွဲဟာပေါ်ဝဲမရတော့ငကောလည်းရှိတယ်မဟုတ်ဘူးမရှိဘူးအရှိလို့ပြီးတော့စိတ်ထဲကထင်မှတ်ပြီးတော့စွဲလန်းရတာဖြစ်ချင်းအဲ့ဒီကြိုးလေးရပေါ်ပါတယ်ခင်ဗျာယုံနာနှစ်ဝကွဲကြီးကအတ္တဒိဋ္ဌိကွာတဲ့အတ္တဒိဋ္ဌိကွာတော့
When one observes with the method as the yogis are doing now and the essence of anupassana is present, then the object of observation becomes distinct. One observes the rising arises, one observes the rising, the falling, one observes the falling, and one comes to start to see stiffness or tension or relaxation. The abdomen becomes stiff, and then the abdomen relaxes. On the rising, the abdomen expands, the falling, it collapses back down. And one doesn't yet see this without the form, without the manner, but one is starting to know the true nature at this time. And one is starting to also see one sees that the rising is one thing, the falling another. And one also sees that the knowing of the rising is one thing, the rising is another. So when one knows the rising, one knows it. The rising arises, one knows it, and then the knowing of it, one is aware that this is a different thing. The falling also, one knows the falling, and one also is aware that the knowing of the falling is different than the falling itself. These two things occur together. And when one is aware of this, that these two different things occur, then this is the discernment of nama and rupa, discernment of mind and matter. And at this time, one only sees, when one looks at one's body, one only sees these two things, mind and matter. one can look for other things. One can look to try to see a being or a man or a woman, but this cannot be found. One only sees mind and matter, nama and rupa. And also, there's no soul to be found. What is occurring is just mind and matter. Before one attached to these ideas that there's a being or that there's a soul. But because one sees clearly that these things are not there, one sees clearly that there are only mind and matter, one no longer holds on to these beliefs, they fall away. And this is the start of vipassana knowledge, to see the distinction between mind and matter. When one observes, when one discerns mind and matter, these two, one dispels the view of soul or self. So previously one attached to this idea that there's a self or a soul. These things aren't really there, but one thought they were. When one sees clearly that they are not there, this belief falls away. So discerning mind and matter, these two, one eliminates the view of self. Because of observing, one knows the nature of mind and matter. And this knowing is not due to reflecting. It's not due to reading about it. And it's also not due to hearing about it from someone else who knows. one sees for oneself, and one sees correctly, and one sees completely. And this is what is meant by sampajano. Anupassana can only occur if one is a person who knows sampajano, if one knows clearly like this. Sampajano refers to a person, and sampajanya refers to knowledge. So these two words are related. Sampajanya means knowing or knowledge. And this word, sampajanya, is made up of three words, sam, pa, and janya. Janya means knowing or knowledge. And sam means correctly. So one observes the rising and one knows stiffness. So one knows this also not only correctly, but one knows it fully. And one doesn't know it just one time, but many times. When the abdomen relaxes, when there's falling, one knows the relaxation, the abdomen gets soft. And other objects also, one sees the true nature that is there, but still mixed in with the form and the manner of the object. Still, one is knowing, and this knowledge is correct. This knowledge is complete, and it is one's own knowledge. And for all these reasons, it's called samjanya. One knows correctly, one knows completely, and one knows personally for oneself. And no one can deny that one knows in this way. This is knowledge that comes not through reading, not through reflecting, not through having heard about it. And what one knows is clear. When one knows like this, one also knows that the rising is one thing and the falling is another. Rising is clearly rising and not falling. Falling is clearly falling and not rising. They're not mixed up with each other. So every rising, every falling, one knows each one distinctly. And one also knows the observation. Knowing the rising is one thing, knowing the falling is another thing. So one sees, every time one notes, one sees the object distinctly. Each object is not mixed up with another object. What one sees is very distinct. And this is the meaning of the prefix pa, put together with pajanya, is to know distinctly.
The Bawa Tida, Sister Tida. The great Bawa killing me, he had no problem. The Java sheep child of the child children and little one. The yoga. The Java you will shower dinner. Church to monkey or whatever. The Sadi, the Sinzadi, you are the Java sheep child of the child children and little one. The Java shower can be the Kona Sinzadi, the Sadida, Jet, you are. Two Javu Tira from the Patsinia Javu Navati, Sinzati, to the Chazi, who do at the Ditthi at the Yoga. Direct the clear she does it. A Patsinia cover.
Also, one knows in a special way. When one read or heard about the Dhamma, one knew, oh, there's mind and matter. One heard about it or read about it. But now, when one practices, one sees it, one knows it in a special way. What we know through reading or reflecting is not our own knowledge. It's not knowledge of true nature. Knowing through reading or reflecting is not an effective way to know true nature. It's like putting a piece of sugar, if someone were to put a piece of sugar in front of you and say, this is sweet. That is the way we know through reading or reflecting. But if we take this piece of sugar and we put it on our tongue, then we know immediately that it is sweet. And this is this type of knowledge that we gain through practice. It's not like the knowledge that we gain through reading or reflecting. The knowledge we gain in practice is like knowing the taste of sugar because we put it on our tongue and taste it. It is special in comparison to the knowledge gained by reading or reflecting. And it is direct knowledge. So this is why it is called pajanya.
The concept is a kalama. Don't let it in a yoke. There are the Tomati for the Rigana. Jonah, Nana Yoks. The great she takes together. For Yoga about it. Judiana Diaria, Nisa, Nature Diari. Pogo, Choco Garamolo, Pogi for a time of the Choco Garamolo, Nature Yoga about it. Tiro, all up in a teenager. I mean, to Yaka and Yvonne, too much she and Yvonne. And you are doing too much she and you. Pogo Choco Mare, Lisa Tias and the body. All up in a teenager, Lisa, Tiao Tito. Yadonese and Tandoka. Pogo keep your kid or wave your kid or Conus in the family, Conus in the parable. To cut Macom, sears or two way. Later, you Tia, where did I see? To cut the Tia Yoga. As you never Atamapa, you are Atamapa, Puguta to Lamaho. Hota, you don't want to know what the Tia. Yandoka Tatanata, a mere seed Yadi, Atama Pass, two way. Pona Pina Yona Napa, Nisa Sura, Tuga Sura, Nata Sura, Territorio Letia Yote. Ludiama, Nito Mefare. The Lia Nidiona Tide, Solution. A child no she a poco level. Tia Yoto, Tuya Yoto, the body of it. Nisa did a Yuna Tia of Tiletane. Duka did a Yuna Tia Tivida. Atamapa, the water the best rather, another Tia, or let it later. The check don't get yet for about it at the later. Kuretida to Mama Mantida, Kiviotida, Kuretida, Yoyo Tida, 3 years Tida, Kuopiatida, Tida, Alon Posana de Cadero, Sampatina, Era Piola, Kiniatana, Yoyo, Yana, Peñaro to the Matono, Nesavia, Kuru and Sessa Villaboli. People really body. Who really, oh, Harane. Take you also with a don't know pay Baba, not you Shiva, who that the Yama to do.
At the moment of rising and falling, the stiffness and tension that one can find is rupa, matter. Knowing the stiffness, knowing the tension, is nama, or mind. Mind and matter, matter and mind. One is knowing what is really there as it is. And this mind and matter are anicca. They arise and then pass away. They arise and they don't stay that way, they pass away. So therefore they are called anicca. This is a name for mind and matter. They are anicca, or impermanent. And so when one knows the rising and the falling, one knows this quality of them, that they are impermanent, and they can be called impermanent. This is like a name for them. And when we know, we are knowing the Dhamma the way it is. What is impermanent is also unsatisfactory. Yada niccang tan dukkhang, it is said. So what arises and then passes away immediately, what is born and then dies, cannot be called good. It's called dukkha, or unsatisfactory. And dukkha also refers to mind and matter, nama and rupa. When one knows that these are impermanent, when one knows anicca, the quality that they have of being impermanent, one also knows dukkha, their unsatisfactory quality. So one knows also, knowing that mind and matter are impermanent, and that they are anicca and dukkha, impermanent and unsatisfactory, one also knows that there is not a soul to be found in there. There's not a person, a being, a man or a woman. It is just an empty process that arises and passes away. And this Dhamma that arises then passes away is unsatisfactory, is also without a self. It is called anatta. So mind and matter have these three names: anicca, dukkha, anatta. They are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and without a self. And one knows these three qualities of mind and matter. It's similar, knowing mind and matter is similar to knowing a person who uses three names. If you know the person goes by one name in one place. You know that person in a given place under a certain name. But that person also has two other names. You still know the same person. The person has three names. You know them by one name. They may use another name in another place, another name in a third place, but it is the same person. So knowing one of these qualities of mind and matter, one knows all three. Because one knows that they are anicca or impermanent, one knows that they are suffering or dukkha. And one also knows that they are without a self, anatta. And this is accomplishing three things at a blow, three at a blow. So in this way, one knows personally what is really there. One knows correctly and distinctly. So if we take the full meaning of sampajanya, one knows correctly and distinctly for oneself. One knows completely and distinctly for oneself. So in this context, in this place, the Buddha used the word sampajanya, which has a very full meaning. And he didn't use other words for knowledge such as jnana or panya in this place. He used sampajanya because it corresponds to what we actually experience in the practice. And the Buddha is unique in speaking in this way. So a person with three names, if you meet this person in one place under one name, you have met this person, although they use another name in a second place and another name in a third place. So mind and matter, they have these three names, anicca, dukkha, and anatta. And if one knows one of these characteristics, one knows all three. It is said in the text, aniccaṃ veditabaṃ, dukkhaṃ veditabaṃ, anatta veditabo. That means that anicca, or impermanence, is to be known. Dukkha is to be known. Anatta is to be known. And if the yogis in their practice come to know like this, they will know that it corresponds to what is in the text. later on, if they study, they will understand the text clearly. If one doesn't practice for oneself, it is not easy to understand what these words mean. Then, because one observes, as Sampajanya indicates, when one discerns mind and matter, the view of self will disappear. Previously, when one didn't know about mind and matter, and one didn't know that they are without a self, one had the belief that there is a self, there is a soul. But through the practice, this is dispelled through seeing the discerning mind and matter. It is this view, this belief, attadeti, the view of self, is not dispelled permanently. It will only be dispelled permanently when vipassana knowledge develops stage by stage and reaches maturity. And one goes from seeing the endless stream of arising and passing away mind and matter to seeing the cessation of this stream, apavata, to when one sees nibbana for the first time. At that point, the view of self, which started to be removed when one first discerned mind and matter, will be cut off completely. This is called samucceda pihana, dispelling it by cutting it off. Now, in the time of the practice, during when one realizes, when one discerns mind and matter, this is dispelling it on a momentary basis. So one needs to go all the way to the extent of dispelling this belief permanently.
Visuddhi to the Digali don't have it. Visuddhi to the Churu Charja CK Chin City Yara. A pint from the bank where we have Changana Yatava. But Mabaya Sila Visuddhi Sila Sikia. Low down is the Roche, Lezo Navadilla. She had a she had the love. That is that is one. She loved to hear. She loved to see Halochi and Guru out of the come to Masa, Pore, I know. Maluta money also, I say, I say that the lady killer is the shadow of the hero. Second, the body, the Kuna good sister, so I kill our resolution. The Karaga Terminal, the Karaga Terminal, Jagama, a pit, you would not the idea of Muno. Tachina said, lady, you dance you the shit of one. That a take out with so deep to cover the door. 60 ကျုပ်ပြောလို့ရှိရင်တော့ကိုယ်ရင်းအာရုံလွတ်တတ်မှဖို့ရကျောင်းကျဆက်ပြီးတော့သုံးရတဲ့တတိတိဖြစ်လာပြီးတော့အဲ့ဒီတတိသုံးရတဲ့အာရုံမှာစိုက်ကြရတယ်အဲ့ဒါစိတ်ဓာတ်ကိုသိရစိတ်စီကြတာဒီစိတ်စီကြမှုတွေအာကောင်းလာဝိရတတိသမာဓိပါတဲ့မစိတ်ကလေးတွေပေါ်လေတစ်ခုနဲ့တစ်ခုဆင်ကျဲပြီးတော့ဆက်ဆက်လာလို့ရှိတယ်ခန္ဓာဒိဋ္ဌိဝိသုဒ္ဓိဆိုတာပေါ်လာတာပဲရှုကြအာယုရှုပြီးတိုင်းပေါ်လေရှုကြတဲ့ခုရှုတာတစ်ခုဆိုတာပေါ်လေကိုယ်ကိုယ်ပြသိတာပါပဲယောဂတစ်ခုနာငါတစ်ခုယောဂတစ်ခုဆိုတာအခုလိုသိလာတာပဲဒိဋ္ဌိဝိသုဒ္ဓိဆိုတာအတိညာလေးစင်ကြဲလာတာတကယ်အရှိပြည့်တဲ့ခါကျတော့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တ attva မဟုတ်ယောက်ျားမင်းမဟုတ်ဇီဝအတ္တအသက်ကောင်မဟုတ်ဆိုတာဟုတ်တာကတော့ကိုယ်တွေ့ကြတာကနာနဲ့ရုပ်ပဲဆိုတာပေါ့လေရှင်းလာတာအဲဒီခါမျိုးမှာဒိဋ္ဌိဝိသုဒ္ဓိတဲ့အတိညာနဲ့တရားစာစေစားယူရတဲ့အတိညာမဟုတ်ဘူးစာဖတ်လို့သိတဲ့အတိမျိုးမဟုတ်ဘူးအတွေ့အခေါ်အလေးအထားနဲ့ရတဲ့အတိမဟုတ်ဘူးဆရာကပြောလို့ရရှိတဲ့အတိမဟုတ်ဘူးစာကညွှန်ထားတဲ့အတိုင်းပေါ့လေတကယ်ကိုစိတ်တန်ရှင်းလို့ပေါ့လေအတိညာဖြစ်လို့တဲ့ယုံကြည်မှုဆန္ဒပြည့်ကြပြီးတော့အထောက်အကူဖြစ်တာအဲ့ဒါနားလည်ထားပါတယ်အဲ့ဒါကဒိဋ္ဌိဝိသုဒ္ဓိဖြစ်တယ်လို့ဆိုပါတယ်ကိုယ်တိုင်အားထုတ်လို့ကိုယ်တိုင်တကယ်အရှိသဘောကိုသိတာဒိဋ္ဌိဝိသုဒ္ဓိ
In the Buddhist text, there's the word Visuddhi, which means special purity or special purification. And there are 7 parts of this purity. The first is Sila Visuddhi, purity of Sila, or morality. So our Sila, our morality must be pure. For lay people, they must keep at least 5 precepts. Monks must keep the rules of the monks. And if Sila Visuddhi is established, purity of Sila, then when one practices, starting with the rising and falling, applying effort to observe every arising object, because of the application of effort, the mind will stick to the object. And when this the application of effort and the arising of sati occurs again and again continuously, the mind develops energy. Sometimes for 1 minute, one can be observed continuously in this way, sometimes for 5 minutes. At this time, the nivaranas, the obstacles to wholesomeness and to concentration, can no longer enter the mind. And while they are distanced, while they are kept away, the pure mind occurs again and again and again, one after another. This is called Chitta Visuddhi, or purity of mind. To the extent that one applies concerted effort to observe the arising object. Doing this again and again brings sati, and the mind falls collectedly on the object. This is citta visuddhi, purity of mind. And when this is strong, when effort, mindfulness, and concentration, or virya, sati, and samadhi, occur moment by moment, again and again, without a break, then Ditthi visuddhi, or purity of view, purity of knowing, arises. And at that time, every time one observes the object of observation, one knows, for example, that the object is one thing, and observation of it is another. Or one knows that matter is one thing, and mind is another. Rupa is one thing, nama is another. And as now, practicing as now, one knows so one knows, one's knowing becomes purified, and this is called Ditthi visuddhi, purity of knowledge. So one no longer sees a being or a man or a woman, a self or a soul. One just sees nama and rupa. And this Ditthi visuddhi, this is also the start of knowledge. This is knowledge that is not gained through reading, nor through reflecting about it, nor through hearing about it from someone who knows. It is because one learned what is said in the text and one practiced according to what one learned, with faith and desire to gain the benefits. So this is what brings about the purity of knowledge, Ditthi visuddhi. Because of one's practice, one's own effort, one comes to know for oneself.
Pansingika to cover in Anava Shide. She by Popa education over it. And I'm a place of Veneto Waterman, she old machine. And I did a Adoluchi, Watermania, Matonda, two are the same ticket for you did it, take a Zakaria, you did it, Suba. The cooler sound, take a Zakaria, that is Zakaria to the sound. Ishing are very good generation, man, and anyone, Yanam, she went. Mayamana Shumat and Yogi, Eddie Yogi, Takana Bay, ago Tamari Canada, Kitumare, the Maricana, not in your Canada, Kitumare. Pacifica, Meha, the Kuna the two, a shame of sister with a shell at the brother. You say, no, Shippo.
When we discern mind and matter, nama and rupa, because of observation, if we analyze what is happening in that moment, there are 5 things involved, or 2 groups, the samadhi group, or concentration group, and the panya group, the wisdom group. In the samadhi group, what is happening is, starting with the rising and the falling, one makes ardent effort to observe the arising object. This is right effort. And steadfast sati arises to the extent that one applies effort to observe the object. And because of the steadfast sati, the mind falls collectively on the object, which is samadhi. So this occurs many times. There are many, many applications of ardent effort, many occurrences of steadfast sati, many occurrences of samadhi. So one after another, this occurs many times, and so it is called the samadhi kanda, or the group of collectedness of mind. Aiming is also present. Initially, our aim is inaccurate and the mind misses the object, it slips off. But now, when aim is accurate, the mind meets the object directly, head on. The observation of the object is exact. And to the extent that one's aim is accurate, knowledge, this sampajanya, arises. So these 2 factors make up the panya group of the path. There are many occurrences of aiming. There are many instances of accurate aim. And to the extent that there is accurate aim, there's knowledge. Without accurate aim, there won't be knowledge arising. So when aim is accurate, then one knows clearly. One knows mind and matter. So these 2 are the panya group, the wisdom group. So there are 3 factors in the samadhi group, and 2 factors in the panya group. And altogether this makes 5, which is called panchangika. It refers to the forerunner path that contains 5 parts, 5 elements. And we need to develop this. Without developing this 5-fold path, no knowledge will arise. But with development of this 5-fold path, there's no need to wish for knowledge to arise, because it will arise automatically. So one needs to practice with respect for the practice, with meticulous care, and without stopping all the time one is awake, except for the time one is asleep. One should apply the practice. A yogi who practices in this way develops the samadhi kanda, develops concentration in a short time. And to the extent that samadhi is developed, panya will arise, wisdom will arise. These two occur together. Concentration and wisdom occur together, not one after another. They occur at the same time.
Yo pagati mechi ne mamye ne tipwe tipwe de ya le ko the microscope to magnify the thing ji ya through a yo ma ho ba bu tu de kha ba le be the akho you da le ti ja ja la tu de la ji le na la e da le ji ya ba de Sheza check it minute. She son said to the minute had she was. But we didn't know minute, any power take her. Microscope, financially in Lover. Told to the Korea, you say a kilo minute, Seiko, Archie, or power repair, who will not matter. We have to be the power repair. Power article, Chingalaka, power repair. No power key or a Hazaro. Kuna Sabajinia Surabari. Mama go with the Atuja Tigger. Give it also. Go with the Atuja Tigger. Go there. Go with the Atuja Tigger. Pavilo, we have to do the Mari for it. Say power, volume. 6 အားကြီးရောက်သွားလို့ပဲနော်ဒီတော့တကယ်ရှိယုံနဲ့သဘာဝတွေသိကျင်လို့ရှိရင်တော့ခုနပါဝါတွေတင်ပြရမှာဖြစ်တိုင်းမှာရှိသတိပြုစောင့်မှုဆင်ထားတဲ့တိုင်ဖြစ်တဲ့ဖြစ်တိုင်းကိုသတိကံလေးရဘယ်လိုတတ်မှတ်ရမှာပါလဲစိတ်တိုင်းကြိုးစားပြီးတော့မိမိရဲ့စိတ်ကိုစွမ်းအားတွေပေါ်လေဖြစ်နေကြပါစေစိတ်ဆွမ်းအားတွေပြည့်ပြီးတော့အကောင်းတာတွေရှောင်ရှားကောင်းတာတွေဆောင်ပွားပြီးတော့လူပိသားကိုလူစိတ်ဓာတ်ကိုလူသိညာရှိပြီးလူစိတ်ကိုပြည့်အောင်ကျိုးစားနိုင်ကြပါစေလို့လေးလေးနဲ့တိုက်တွန်းရတဲ့ဒီနေ့တရားဆောင်တတ်လိုက်ပါမယ်
When we want to see something small, something very small that we can't see with the ordinary eye, we have to use something like a microscope or a magnifying glass in order to see. The glass in a microscope or a magnifying glass is not ordinary glass. It has to be ground exactly. And if we want to see, for example, 10 times more powerfully than we can see with the naked eye, we have to use that much magnifying power. So it's like this when we try to see the very small things that occur in one's body. We have to, just like we have to grind the glass so that it becomes powerful, so too we have to make our mind powerful by filling it with energy. And the energy that we need to develop is the energy of virya, sati, and samadhi. Effort, mindfulness, and concentration, plus aiming. When these energies are developed, then sampajanya will occur. That is, knowing correctly, distinctly, and in a special way. Knowing completely, distinctly, and in a special way. Knowing for oneself, distinctly, in a special way. Why does this knowledge come about? It comes about because of the power of virya, sati, and samadhi that are developed. And if one wants to see the mind and matter that are really in us, the very small things, then one needs to develop these. So whenever an object arises, At the moment of arising, one has to guard the mind with vigilant mindfulness. So Sayadawgyi hopes that you may all be able to try like this and to develop your mental power so that you will be able to avoid what is to be avoided and do the things that should be done, becoming a true human with special human knowledge. That's all for today.